You guys want to play a game?
Yeah.
She was dedicated to her children.
She showed them that she loved them.
To see her evolve into a mother was a beautiful thing.
Until it all came to a horrific end.
It was a bloodied crime scene.
One of the worst cases I've ever looked at.
Who does this?
Was it the father of her oldest?
He was hustling.
He was always in and out of jail.
Was it the married man who'd been keeping her a secret?
There has to be an underlying personality disorder there to live a double lifestyle.
Do you want to tell me why I got a call today from your wife?
You throw infidelity into the mix, and that complicates things.
Or was it the new man in her life?
Not only is it the capital, but it is a college town with numerous campuses in the area.
Mostly it's a nice, tranquil community, great place to raise a family.
But for one Tallahassee family, this Saturday is anything but tranquil.
Hey, it's Brandy. Leave a message.
Hey, Brandy, it's Mom again. Give me a call when you get this.
Brandy's family members hadn't heard from her, which was very unusual.
Her mother was starting to feel that unsettling feeling.
And as her worry grows, Brandy's mother makes another call.
Brandy's mother called a neighbor who lived across the street.
She had her go over and see if she was all right.
It's probably nothing, but...
It's no problem at all. I was just walking out the door anyway. I'm gonna call you back, okay?
That intuition is not something that is easily ignored.
When the neighbor gets to Brandy's house, her mother's intuition proves correct.
Brandy?
She looked through the window and saw Brandy Peters' body there in the foyer.
Brandy!
27-year-old Brandy Peters grew up in a tight-knit family.
She was very family-oriented. Loved the family.
They spent a lot of time together. She was definitely very loved.
You could even say she was a little spoiled.
She was the baby. So I would say she probably was the diva of the family.
She was real feisty.
And she always turned the boys' heads.
She was into dressing nice. She was a beautiful girl. Guys was after her.
But Brandy had her sights on something different. At 21, she started dating a man named Mario Michaels.
He was much older than us.
It wasn't exactly the most stable of relationships. It was very tumultuous.
He was always in and out of jail.
But when Mario wasn't behind bars, there was little doubt they were in love.
They had a good relationship.
They also had 2 children together, twin girls.
She took on that motherly role. She loved them.
But with Mario frequently out of the picture, Brandy was often raising the kids on her own.
It was very difficult for Brandy.
Because it's a struggle doing it by yourself.
What she needed was someone she could depend on. Someone who wasn't Mario.
She was looking for someone who had a good job, had his head on his shoulder, wasn't in and out of jail, and could be a part of the kid's life.
Brandy thought she might have found him in 28-year-old Henry Segura.
Her and Henry met at a gas station, traded numbers.
How are you?
I'm good.
When they started dating, it looked as if Henry checked all the boxes.
He wasn't in the streets. He wasn't a convicted felon. He wasn't living that lifestyle.
He also had a good job.
How was the drive over?
He was an over-the-road welder.
He traveled from job site to job site.
And he was good with her kids.
He had actually a very close relationship with the twins.
She thought she had someone that was different. She thought she had met the real thing.
There was only one problem.
Do you want to tell me why I got a call today from your wife?
Henry Segura was married.
I'm sorry. The news came as quite a shock to Brandy. I didn't mean for all this to happen.
Why didn't you tell me?
Look, it's not what you think.
Henry told Brandy that he and his wife were on the verge of splitting up.
That can be really challenging, wanting them to choose you and remaining in that situation.
A situation made even more difficult by the fact that Brandy was carrying Henry's son.
What do we do now?
It's going to be fine. I'm not going anywhere.
He has displayed himself as a decent provider, father figure to the girls, and now it's like I'm having his child, so I have to weigh my options, and she stayed.
But after the birth of their child, Brandy came to a realization.
It became clear to her that he had no intention of leaving his wife.
She said, I'll always be a number 2 or 3 in this person's life.
Brandy broke things off with Henry and spent the next 2 years starting over as a single mom.
She was just trying to get on her feet.
To be there for 3 children is not easy.
But she rose to the occasion.
She got a new home and a new job.
She was doing home health. She was a home health aide.
She was looking forward to what the future holds.
Only now, the bright future Brandy imagined may never come to pass.
Unable to get a hold of Brandy, her mother called a neighbor to go knock on Brandy's door.
Brandy! She saw her laying in the foyer. She saw a large amount of blood.
Brandy!
And called law enforcement.
When officers arrive on scene, they make forced entry into the home.
She's inside.
But there's nothing they can do for Brandy.
She had gunshot wounds. There appeared to be trauma to her head.
She was dead at the scene.
Then, responding officers clear the rest of Brandy's house.
The officers had to make sure there weren't any other victims, but also make sure the suspect is there.
There's no sign of the shooter.
But in the bathroom, the officers made a horrific discovery.
Here we got more bodies.
Years creating a stable life for her 3 children after ending her relationship with the father of her youngest.
She was married the whole time.
Because it had been a struggle, but she was really starting to get focused on, let me get the kids settled in school, let me focus on where I need to take my career.
But now, Brandy's fresh start has come to a tragic end.
Brandy and her 3 children are dead.
No one had had any contact with her since the night before.
When homicide detectives arrive at the scene, they start by examining Brandy's body, which lies just inside the front door.
There was a bloodied crime scene right there in the foyer.
She'd been beaten and has what appear to be gunshot wounds.
Suspiciously, though, no casings were there. So that tells us 2 things. Either it was cleaned up or someone used a revolver.
And while Brandy died in the foyer, detectives can tell the attack wasn't confined to that area.
A violent struggle occurred in there.
There was a large amount of blood down the hallway.
The children, on the other hand, appear to have been drowned.
The person who committed the crime ended up putting all 3 children in the bathtub together.
Who does this? Who would kill kids and then not only that, but drown them in a bathtub?
That's just not something you see very often.
While the CSI team finishes inside, detectives speak with the neighbor who found Brandy.
The neighbor was a good friend of Brandy's. They would go to pick up their children together from school.
She had no idea who might have done this.
Brandy, she's good people.
When the detectives talk to other neighbors, they're just as shocked by what happened.
There was a lot of community concern. This is a small little raise your family type of community, and not that's ever supposed to happen, but you definitely don't want it happening here.
However, while the neighbors are understandably worried about a killer coming into their community, the detectives don't believe they're dealing with a random crime.
There was no forced entry into the residence, so that led them to believe that she must have known this person.
A lack of forced entry isn't the only thing that suggests Brandy knew her killer.
It was just such a brutal attack. Gunshot after gunshot and blow after blow. Law enforcement thought it was very personal.
Is that what detectives are dealing with here? Eager to find out, they turn to Brandy's family, who have started arriving at the scene as word of the murders spreads.
It was just a tough moment that day, when get a phone call saying Brandy and the girls had been killed.
I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you a few questions first.
Believe it.
We really were trying to gather as much information. We were doing that to the best we can.
It was tough. This is something that happened at your back door with your own family.
Oh, I can't believe it. I just saw them.
When was that?
Oh, yesterday, around 5 o'clock.
She was supposed to take the twins with her for a sleepover, but the twins didn't want to go.
And that was the last time you saw her?
Yeah. Well, we talked a little later on the phone around 7, but she didn't answer again after that.
Turning to Brandy's relationships, her mother says she never approved of Henry Segura, her grandson's father.
She made me aware that Henry was married.
Was Brandy okay with that?
For the most part.
She was like, it is what it is.
What about Henry's wife?
Yeah. He went back to her.
She said Henry didn't really come around much after the baby was born.
He would bring diapers over, but he couldn't really be involved.
And the twins' dad?
Mario? Yeah, he's around.
Mario would bring them birthday presents. Mario would bring them Christmas gifts. They did communicate.
But Brandy's mother said she's not a big fan of Mario either.
He was in the streets, putting the streets first.
However, that isn't the only thing Brandy's mother has against Mario.
According to Brandy's mother, Mario was a deadbeat dad.
She just took him to court.
The week of the homicide, he was ordered to pay child support.
How much did he owe?
Around $20,000, maybe a little more.
Detectives investigating the murder of Brandy Peters and her 3 children have learned a judge recently ordered her ex-boyfriend, Mario Michaels, to pay Brandy more than $20,000 in back child support.
Often individuals would prefer not to go through the state. They can resolve those disputes amicably, and it sounds like that was the only option that she felt like she had at that point.
She said, if you're not going to be a stand-up guy, then I'm going to have to go another route with your child support.
Could the judgment against Mario have anything to do with the murders?
He definitely is a person of interest.
And the detectives won't have any trouble finding him.
He was beside himself with grief. This man was hurt.
But just because Mario was showing emotion still doesn't mean he'd do it.
Questioned by the detectives, Mario insists he didn't have anything to do with the murders.
How did you hear about what happened?
He explained to me that he got word through the grapevine, so to speak, that an incident had occurred.
Well, we heard that you and Brandy weren't getting along too well.
That was just money issues.
He didn't deny that he'd have problems with Brandy over the thousands owed in child support.
I know I owe her, I just don't have it.
He provided us information about Brandy, their relationship, his relationship with his daughters.
He definitely wouldn't have hurt his own girls. He loved those twins.
Okay, so where were you last night?
With my girlfriend at a motel.
He was cooperative with police as far as giving them information.
Why don't you and I go talk?
Not only was Mario cooperative, it appears he is telling the truth.
When the detectives followed up on his alibi, the motel had a record of him being there that night. And his girlfriend said he never left the room.
Thank you so much.
With Mario apparently in the clear, detectives move on to Henry Segura, the father of Brandy's youngest child.
He agreed to come to talk with us. He was very even-keeled, very calm, very cordial, but that's not unusual. Everybody grieves differently.
And when detectives asked about his relationship with Brandy, Henry admitted it was complicated.
It started off as an affair, and it was supposed to go into something else, but for whatever reason, that never transpired. But he and Brandy were working it out.
What kind of person is she?
Spunky. She's down to earth. She's real sweet. She's a cool person.
But he says things went downhill with Brandy once his wife learned about the affair.
She caught me on the phone bill one day. Seen the phone bill, saying I was calling this number a lot.
Henry said his wife had confronted Brandy about the affair.
She just would tell her, stop messing with me and yada, yada, yada.
But Brandy was kind of like throwing gas on the fire.
She texted my wife, called her something fat, something.
According to Henry, that's when he decided to cut things off.
I said, I'm tired of you being disrespectful to my wife. I said, I don't think me and you mess around with her.
He had to break it off with Brandy, and he got back with his wife.
But investigators wonder, was this too little, too late?
Your wife doesn't like Brandy, does she?
She didn't like her that much, no. Unless she wouldn't kill her.
But would Henry?
They asked him when was the last time he had seen Brandy.
I was in her house Wednesday.
This past Wednesday?
That's 48 hours before the killings.
What you're doing there? What's going on?
Just seeing it Wednesday.
Okay.
Henry explains that he couldn't see his son as often as he liked.
That was my first time going there in a while.
But he said he was trying to do right by them.
I put myself on child support.
So she never filed the paperwork for it? You did it?
I did it myself.
Henry also has an alibi for the evening of the murder.
He said, I was at home. He told them, you can check my cell phone. Check with my wife.
Are there any other numbers?
He even agrees to give detectives a DNA sample.
He was cooperative.
And when the detectives pull his cell phone records, they confirm that he was home on the evening of the murder.
His wife also told police that she and Henry spent the evening at home.
Okay, bye-bye.
However, just as the investigation seems to be at a dead end,
Homicide, Lewis.
a friend of Brandy's contacts the detectives with a new lead.
I have some information. I'm not sure if it's connected, but I thought you should know.
She said Brandy had been in contact with a federal prison inmate named Enrique Sanchez.
Enrique has been writing letters to Brandy.
These letters that he sent, they were threatening.
Bonding with a prison inmate named Enrique Sanchez.
This girl her peoples was, locked up, and she had somebody that was looking for someone to be a pen pal with.
Mr. Sanchez sent Brandy letters from the Department of Corrections.
For the person serving time, it helps them feel like they have someone in their corner. They don't feel like they have to do that time alone.
And Brandy got something out of it too.
She's a single mom. She has 3 kids. She has a lot going on in her life. So to be able to communicate with someone and have a connection with someone that you really don't have to make time for, that might have been something that she was able to gain that connection and that stimulation from, but not devote a lot of her actual energy or time to.
But their casual relationship eventually took a serious turn.
Yeah, he actually proposed to her.
Enrique told Brandy he wasn't just any inmate.
And he said that he was a high-level member of a criminal organization out of Chicago and promised Brandy fortune just to marry him.
The friend admits that Brandy was intrigued by Enrique's offer.
But she also wondered if it was a little too good to be true.
She was really hesitant.
Brandy became suspicious of Mr. Sanchez.
According to Brandy's friend, when she declined Enrique's offer, he refused to take no for an answer.
He became a little bit obsessed, just, like talking crazy.
And 2 days before the murder, Enrique sent Brandy a menacing letter. And in the letter, he accused her of being disloyal.
Was it just a coincidence? Or did it have something to do with Brandy's death?
If Enrique was some sort of gang leader, he could have arranged a hit.
It was such a violent crime. I don't know of another crime as violent as this in Tallahassee. Thank you.
When the detectives received the autopsy results, there's no doubt they're dealing with a cold-hearted killer.
Brandy was shot 8 times.
They've also found evidence that one of the children had been shot.
We thought all 3 were drowned. We found one was shot in the head.
2 of those children were alive when they were put in that bathtub, and their 3rd sibling was used to hold them down. I don't even know what to say. It's awful.
To explore the possibility that Brandy and her children were the victims of a gang hit, the detectives set up an interview with Enrique in federal prison.
During an investigation, we have to go down every single lead.
Okay, yes, she turned down my proposal, but that doesn't mean that I killed her.
However, he does repeat the claim that he's a high-ranking member of the powerful Vice Lords gang.
Mr. Sanchez said that he was involved in various other criminal activities that were somewhat high profile. Gave us quite the story.
But detectives came away from the interview suspecting it was just that, a story.
And we pretty much figured out that he wasn't fully there.
There definitely are indicators that he's suffering from a severe mental illness.
And when detectives did a little digging, they discovered he wasn't in prison for anything gang-related.
The reason why he's incarcerated was for sending threatening letters to governors.
And he was someone who kind of perpetually took credit for a lot of different crimes.
With Enrique looking like a dead end, the detectives regroup.
Hoping for a new lead, they subpoenaed Brandy's cell phone records.
When we're doing a homicide investigation, it's like casting a net for fishing. See what comes back.
The records show that on the day of the murder, Brandy had been in frequent contact with a number registered to a man named Aaron Bishop.
So we immediately had an interview with him.
Do you know a woman named Brandy Peters?
No, I never heard of her.
Figuring they've caught Aaron in a lie, the detectives confront him about the calls from his phone.
Aaron's like, what? Hold on, what phone?
When detectives explained, He said he'd given that phone to a coworker.
This coworker have a name? Yes, Henry Segura.
Which means that shortly before her death, Brandy had been on the phone with her ex-boyfriend.
Murder of Brandy Peters and her 3 children have reason to believe she'd been in contact with her ex, Henry Segura, in the hours leading up to the murders.
It started when they traced the number from Brandy's phone records to a friend of Henry's named Aaron Bishop.
They worked together doing jobs on the welding site.
We were out on a job and I messed up my phone.
You had spilt a drink on top of the phone and the phone stopped working.
Aaron says he'd given the phone to Henry.
Henry takes the phone, puts it in a bag of rice, which is a technique to dry out your phone, and he realized that it still worked.
He asked me if I wanted it back, but I'd already got a new one, so I said he could keep it.
So now Henry thought in his mind, well, oh, okay, cool. I have a second phone that doesn't have my name on it.
Remember, that's how Henry's wife initially found out about his affair with Brandy.
She caught me on the phone bill.
Had he also lied about having a second phone?
Are there any other numbers?
To be sure, the detectives subpoena the tower records for Aaron's old phone.
What they learned could be the key to solving this case.
That phone was at Brandy Peters' house the night of the murder.
Literally on top of the crime scene, right on top of it. And it had been there for hours prior to the murder.
All the detectives need to do now is prove that it was Henry doing the stalking. And the phone records may reveal a way to do it.
Brandy's number wasn't the only one that popped up in the phone records.
Whoever had the phone had also been in regular contact with a number registered to a woman named Letitia Lyle.
Hello? They spoke to her and she confirmed she was talking to Henry Segura on that phone.
The phone came up under another name, but it was always Henry.
So, why did he use another phone?
Well, he's married.
She was another girl he was having a relationship with.
She was enamored with Henry Segura. She thought that this was a relationship that was going to go somewhere.
But Letitia says she'd recently seen another side of Henry.
He had anger problems.
She noticed how much of a temper that he had.
Like, he put his hands on you?
No, nothing like that. He was just angry all the time.
What about?
This girl, he said she was always trying to put a kid on him.
According to Letitia, he just was venting and venting and venting about Brandy and the situation about the child support. And the fact that he had to pay this money to Brandy for a child that he didn't even think was his.
Which sounds an awful lot like a motive for murder.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Bye.
After Letitia confirms that Henry had a second secret phone, the detectives bring him in for another round of questioning.
What's your other cell phone number?
I have no other cell phone.
Of course, the detectives know that's not true.
I know you have a second.
Once he realizes the detectives have caught him in the lie, he admits he had another phone. In the past.
That was a while ago. That was before Brandy passed away.
He used it to talk to girls he was seeing on the side.
What'd you do with it? I mean,
Throw it away.
Why'd you throw a phone away?
So I don't need it.
When detectives asked when exactly he got rid of that phone, he was just as vague.
I don't remember. I just remember getting rid of phones. I don't want her to find the phone. Like I say, I don't see where that has anything to do with this.
The detectives, on the other hand, believe Henry's lies about the phone tie everything together.
He never told police about that second cell phone because he knew that with that information, they'd be able to see that his location was consistent with Brandy Peters' house the night of this murder.
I know you were over at her house on Friday. Okay?
We confronted Henry about that information, and at that point, he declined to cooperate any further in the investigation.
I don't answer no more of y'all questions. I don't like the way y'all seem like you're trying to railroad me into being someone that killed a lady and her kids, which being one of my children. I don't have anything to say. Y'all still need to question me. Can I go home now?
For now, detectives have no choice but to let Henry go.
We never felt we had the wrong person. But the evidence we had in this case was very circumstantial. You had a phone, you had a timeline.
And we know he had a motive.
So, to learn more about that motive, detectives dig into the court records.
What they uncover confirms what Letitia told them.
He was ordered to pay a lot of money in child support.
In fact, he owed Brandy even more money than Mario.
Investigating the murder of single mom Brandy Peters and her 3 small children, have discovered that Henry Segura, the father of her youngest child, owed her a significant amount of child support.
Henry told police that he had put himself on child support.
She never filed the paperwork for it. You did it?
I did it too.
But what he hadn't told them was that he'd gotten significantly behind on his payments.
He's an over-the-road welder. He can have a job 1 month and not have a job for 2 more months.
However, in talking to Henry's co-workers, the detectives learned that he had a plan to deal with his money problems.
Henry had a chance to go to Afghanistan and do military contracting as a welder and get 6 figures.
However, there was one big problem in his plan.
If you have child support payments outstanding, then you cannot leave the country.
With Brandy and their son standing between him and a potential 6-figure payoff, the detectives believe Henry had made a choice.
He felt that he'd be much better off if she was dead and maybe even the kid.
And when the detectives receive the results of the forensics testing from the crime lab, they're convinced that Henry had done the unthinkable to get rid of his child support problems.
Henry Segura's DNA is on the grab bar of the bathtub.
That puts him at the scene where the children were drowned.
Finally, in September of 2011, more than a year after the murders, the authorities place Henry under arrest for murder.
When he was arrested, we attempted to speak to him again, but he didn't want to talk.
In fact, the news that Henry had been arrested for killing both Brandy and his own son leaves nearly everyone speechless.
When it came out that he was involved, it was a shock to think that he could do something like this.
The crime was so heinous that soon after Henry's arrest, prosecutors announced that they would be seeking the death penalty.
It's one of the worst cases I've ever looked at, and if you have kids, your stomach turns. And if anybody deserved death penalty, it was going to be the subject that did this.
There was no offers, no deals.
When Henry goes on trial for murder, the prosecutors maintain that his motive was simple.
Henry Segura committed these murders because he didn't want to pay child support.
It's a need to take back control. The emotional side takes over the rational side.
And according to the prosecutors, there is no doubt that it was Henry who killed Brandy and the kids.
We know from his second cell phone that he was there that night.
And then his DNA being on the bathtub of the house.
What do you want now, Henry?
The prosecutors also argue that Henry's actions that night prove the crime was premeditated.
You have your main phone at home to create an alibi, and then took your second phone with you.
Then he'd gone over to Brandy's house.
We need to talk.
Okay. Come in.
But at some point, after he'd gotten in the door, Henry pulled his gun.
Brandy went to try to either get the phone or even get, whatever weapon she may have had. And I think he started to shoot as she was going down the hall. And then she was beat to death by the gun. But she was not going to go down without a fight, especially for those children. She fought that fight for her kids.
Once Brandy was dead, Henry went looking for his son. But he'd made a miscalculation.
I don't think the twins were supposed to be home. I think it was just supposed to be his son and Brandy at the house. And now he realizes he has to take care of all of them.
How could you do such a thing? To have taken the life of your own flesh and blood, and innocent children, and the mother of your child? He's a monster.
And you kill your son in order for you not to have to pay $20,000 in child support? 20 grand, bro?
There was no conscience there. He cared more about protecting himself and protecting his lifestyle.
When it's the defense's turn, they argue that Henry is totally innocent.
The defense in this case was always Henry didn't do it. You got the wrong person.
And when the defense put Henry on the stand, he certainly did not look like a killer.
He gets his direct from his defense attorney. It comes across clean, calm, he's cool, collected, no issues.
But the defense's strategy isn't without risk.
We knew that he definitely wasn't always respectful of women. Just looking at the evidence in his cell phone, how he talked to the women he was in relationships with.
He had anger problems.
So let's see how he reacts to being questioned by a woman.
The cross-examination by Sarah Dugan allowed the jury to see the true colors of Henry.
When he felt challenged, especially by a woman, he realized and started lashing back at her.
The switch flips, and you get to see the monster that's inside him.
The jury definitely saw it.
Henry Segura was found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder.
However, they stopped short of the death penalty.
Henry Segura was sentenced to life in prison.
The family can finally have closure. Justice was served. It's done. The book is closed on this one.
But no amount of prison time will ever make up for the pain Henry caused, or the lives he took.
This will always be just a sad tragedy. I could never really understand.
She'd never been afraid to chart her own course.
She actually was a long-distance truck driver. She was a diva behind the wheel.
Girl, I'm heading to Houston this time.
She's very independent.
Until she found her ride or die.
He was Mr. Right, he was Mr. It. She was so excited. All she ever wanted was to find that person. Everything was really lining up.
But then she suddenly vanished.
Please record your message.
Please give me a call. I had attempted to call her at least 5 times.
She didn't show up to work. They hadn't seen her.
The family had legitimate concerns.
She wouldn't just disappear like that.
She's not responding to anyone.
And when she finally does, the mystery only deepens.
They got one text message.
It said she was going to the casino.
Maybe this is just her out having a good time.
Or was the truth what everyone feared?
When the door opened, the smell just hit me.
We could all smell it.
Worry. In big towns like Dallas and the suburbs around it. It's a separate town, but when you travel and somebody asks you where you're from, you would say, I'm from Dallas.
It's mainly residential. You had like 1 or 2 places where you could go and hang out, but there was no nightlife.
Most people do go to Dallas or Fort Worth for their major entertainment. See a ball game, go to a concert, go to a club.
But that afternoon, DeSoto resident Kizzy Richardson Walker hasn't gone into Dallas for a club or concert. She's gone missing.
At the tone, please record your message.
Kizzy, it's me. Give me a call, please.
Friends hadn't talked to her. It was uncharacteristic of them not talking to her on a daily basis. And it had been some days.
Please record your message.
Please give me a call.
So after trying to call several times and because she's not responding to anyone else, I left her another message. And the message to her was, hey, I'm extremely wary. I'm going to give you 30 minutes to an hour to call me back. And if you don't call me back, we're going to the police.
It is not like Kizzy to be out of touch and not having spoken with her. So she decides to go ahead and make a call to the police.
DeSoto Police.
Hi, I'd like to report a missing person.
Okay.
Even if we were mad at each other, if one of us called, we were automatically going to answer.
Even more troubling, Kizzy has missed work.
She's a truck driver.
She loved the job. If she didn't show up to work if she was supposed to be there, something was wrong. I got a hold to her dispatcher, and she told me she was supposed to be there, and she didn't show up. They hadn't seen her.
That wasn't like Kizzy. That's not who she was.
She wouldn't just disappear like that.
At this point, I know something is wrong.
Kizzy Richardson never met a stranger.
Kizzy was very, very playful and outgoing, and she wasn't afraid.
Life with Kizzy was adventurous. It was always a good time. We always found a way to laugh and just have fun with each other.
Kenzie's heart is bigger than Texas.
Kizzy also wasn't afraid to follow her passion.
Kizzy absolutely loved driving. She has a great aunt that drove school buses, and so as a child, she used to play like she was a school bus driver. What Kizzy loved the most was bikes. She loved motorcycles, enjoyed the biker clubs and the drag strips.
She eventually parlayed her love of motorsports into a career.
When the opportunity came, she decided that she was going to go to driving school. She worked very hard to make sure that she was building a very solid foundation for herself.
It was a 9-week program to learn about driving trucks.
It's a male-dominated field, but Kizzy didn't care.
She was excited about driving trucks, and she looked good doing it. She was a diva behind the wheel. She was definitely a pretty truck driver. She still wore her makeup, her sundresses, her little flip-flops. When you see her, you would never think that she actually was a long-distance truck driver.
But appearances aside, Kizzy had found her calling.
She loved driving trucks, 18-wheelers. That's kind of where, she seemed the most happiest, is when she was driving.
She loved having the opportunity to be on the road, the different places. There were times that I was traveling for my job, and so we would call each other just to see, how far away was she. I actually would talk to her on the road.
Hey, sis.
Where are you headed this time?
Girl, I'm heading to Houston this time.
It'd take 4 hours to get to Houston and then 4 hours back. So we would be talking about everything and then some. We would talk the whole 8-hour trip.
Everything's looking good. Heading out.
Yet as much as she loved being a long-haul trucker, there was something missing.
Kizzy was a strong, independent woman, but she still wanted that opportunity to have that romantic, loving relationship.
all she ever wanted was to find that person to give her love to.
She also wanted a family.
Kizzy loved family. She wanted to create her own. And who could blame her? That's something that we all want.
And in March of 2010, when Kizzy saw Greg Walker's profile on a dating app, he checked all the boxes.
Ooh, yeah, he is cute. Greg is an older man. He does have a daughter, and he seems to be more mature, more established, ready to settle down.
Kizzy wanted kids of her own. And so to already like meet someone that had a daughter, that was nothing for Kizzy. Like, she loved kids.
He was the one that she had always dreamed of. He was Mr. Right. He was Mr. It. He said all the right things. He did all the right things.
They also had a lot in common.
He drove trucks too, so I thought, okay, well, that's good.
Kizzy was very excited, going on and on about how handsome he was, and, you know, they were really rocking.
And before long, Greg proposed.
Will you marry me?
You mean it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Their affair was actually very fast. Within the first 3 months, they were just going off and basically eloping. We went and had dinner, and she showed me the ring and all of that, and she was elated. I was happy that she found somebody to love her. She's beautiful. Okay, let's get it. I was happy to see her future unfold.
After the wedding, Kizzy moved in with Greg and his little girl.
Hey, baby.
She actually had an awesome relationship with his daughter.
Yeah, purple.
Ooh, purple. You love purple.
Red.
She and I used to go shopping. We went and brought her all clothes, made sure she had hair bows.
She really cared about her, so there was nothing for her to have a nurturing spirit with his daughter.
So everything was really lining up for Kizzy. It was nice seeing her happy like that.
But now, 6 months after saying I do, Kizzy has dropped off the face of the earth.
Give me a call, please.
I had attempted to call her at least 5 times.
Yolanda's next call is the police.
This hotel, please.
One of the myths about a missing person is that you have to wait 24 hours to report them. That is not the case.
There wasn't a day that went by that she wasn't in communication with some close friends and family. So the fact that communication ceased was suspicious to people close to her.
I knew it wasn't good. I knew something bad had happened.
Because Kizzy's sudden silence isn't the only cause for concern.
I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but Kizzy and her husband are going through a divorce.
Who this dude? She'd found the person she wanted to spend the rest of her life with.
I was happy Kizzy found somebody.
All she wanted was to be loved.
She needed that love, the caressing, the thinking that you have someone that has your back.
But now, 6 months after her wedding, Kizzy has mysteriously disappeared.
Okay.
And police have just learned she was in the midst of a divorce.
Do you know what went wrong?
I think they just moved too fast.
They met on a dating site, and they were dating for a month. The next month is when they decided to get engaged.
To the best of my knowledge, the separation was amicable.
And according to Kizzy's friend Yolanda, they were still sorting things out.
She told police that on the day she went missing, Kizzy was planning to meet Greg at their old apartment.
Kizzy said that she was going to Greg to give him back a laptop that he had brought her. To say that, hey, I'm gonna give you back the gift so that you're not mad saying I owe you anything.
Yolanda's story provides a key piece of information for the police.
But I gave it to you.
Greg would have been the last person that Kizzy would have talked to.
But does that mean he had something to do with her disappearance?
You have to factor in everything. For every missing person case, you have to look into the background and the family and the friends saying, hey, we haven't heard from her. It's not like her.
After talking to Yolanda, the report is passed off to detectives who start by dropping by Greg's apartment.
It started out like, hey, we're just going to go see if we can find her, try to find out where she's at.
But when they knocked on Greg's door, there was no answer.
So they just decide to go ahead and leave a note and say, get back to us when you can.
Then, while waiting to hear back from Greg, the detectives follow up on what Yolanda told them.
I did speak with Miss Richards' employer, and they were very concerned. It was very out of character for her to miss work.
We started looking at bank records and her cell phone.
Okay.
They even reach out to the dealership where Kizzy had recently bought a car.
Yes.
When you buy a new car, it's not uncommon for a dealer to ask you if you want tracking on your vehicle for theft recovery or any number of reasons. We did call the dealer, and fortunately, they did have a tracker on it, so we had them activate that tracker.
Detectives are still waiting for the results of the trace when Kizzy's estranged husband suddenly shows up at the station.
Thank you for coming down to talk to us today.
No problem. When I found out she was missing, I came right here.
Greg genuinely seems like he is interested and wants to help.
The detectives start by asking Greg about his relationship with Kizzy.
We were trying to develop a rapport, making small talk, trying to find common ground.
What he tells detectives lines up with what they've already heard from Kizzy's friend, Yolanda.
He advised that they had met on a dating site. They hadn't known each other very long.
He was also surprisingly upfront about why they had split.
He said he loved her, but he wasn't in love with her, but she was good to his child, so he wanted to stay with her.
She has become very close with his daughter.
I thought that would be enough.
But it wasn't?
No.
He had said their relationship was rocky.
What were the biggest issues?
Well, she was always gone.
Kizzy was a pretty independent woman, right? Her profession calls for her to be out on the road for a couple of weeks.
You guys fight about it? We argue, yeah.
And now the detectives want to know if those arguments have anything to do with Kizzy's disappearance.
When was the last time you saw her?
He tells police it's been a couple of weeks, probably September the 25th, when we went to a wedding together.
When was the last time you talked to her? 3 days ago, at 9 a.m. She said she would come by and grab a few things.
But according to Greg, Kizzy never showed.
I called on the phone, but there was no answer.
Greg said he was worried. At first.
But then I saw a post she made on social media.
What post?
He said it was a post she made the night she supposedly disappeared.
She had made a post that she's going to a casino in Oklahoma with another man.
When questioned about her disappearance, Kizzy Richardson Walker's estranged husband Greg tells detectives he believes she's gone to Oklahoma with another man.
He said that Kizzy had made a post on social media that she was going to a casino in Oklahoma.
From her page on Friday?
The Facebook post did say at the casino.
Could that explain why Kizzy's gone silent?
Is Kizzy on a weekend rendezvous somewhere, just out having a good time?
She was done. She wanted the divorce.
Maybe this is just her wanting to take some time to herself.
Okay, thanks for coming in. I'll see you out.
When the detectives follow up with Kizzy's family, there's more evidence that the missing woman is merely on holiday.
They got one text message from her phone saying, I'm in Oklahoma and I'm at a casino and I'm winning money.
Hoping to verify the social media post, the detectives contact the casino in hopes of reaching Kizzy.
However, according to the front desk, there was no one staying at the hotel under Kizzy's name.
It was a red flag.
Or could the room be reserved under the name of the mystery man mentioned in the social media post?
Is this new man responsible for her disappearance?
Thank you very much.
Before the detectives can dig any deeper into the man's identity,
The scars, huh?
they hear back from Kizzy's car dealership. According to the GPS tracker, her car was in Dallas.
Okay.
Kizzy's vehicle was located in an area of Dallas that it's not a great area.
When the detectives meet the Dallas PD at the GPS location, it appears that the car has been abandoned.
The car license plates had been taken off, windows were rolled down, keys were on the console.
It also appears to have been recently cleaned.
Now, whether it was cleaned before when Kizzy had it, we don't know.
But what's most suspicious for detectives is what's missing from the trunk.
The spare tire cover is removed. And what's even more alarming is the carpet under the bottom of the trunk is gone.
We're starting to gather really quickly that this is not just a missing person, that we were working a homicide.
And if the killer had transported Kizzy's body in the trunk, that could explain the missing carpet and the spare tire cover.
It could also explain why the car had ended up in a high crime area with the keys inside.
It was staged there. It was pretty obvious.
The intention was to have that car stolen, have someone do something with that vehicle so that someone else could be blamed for what happened to her.
But if that was the plan, it backfired.
The car sat there for 2 or 3 days.
It was unlocked, keys were in it, but nobody touched it.
I think anybody who looked in there thought, oh, wow, this is a setup.
Hoping the car would reveal what happened to Kizzy, the forensics team searches it for DNA and prints.
The detectives also searched the surrounding areas for surveillance cameras.
Both efforts come up empty-handed.
There were no cameras in the area, and the car had been too thoroughly cleaned to provide any useful evidence.
Much like the detectives, the discovery of Kizzy's car leaves friends and family fearing the worst.
She wouldn't have just left a car like that. I knew it was foul play.
But if something terrible had happened, who was to blame? Once she hears that Kizzy's car has been found, her sister reaches out to detectives with some disturbing information.
Understand you have some information about Kizzy.
More so about Greg. He was jealous and very controlling.
It was in the finances, especially when she started making more money than he was. She drove the big 18-wheeler. He drove locally. So I think it was a shock at his manhood.
For a person, a man who wants power and control, that's not going to work. Because clearly I can't control you if you are pretty independent.
It did something to him. It didn't bother her. In her mind, she was taking care of the family. She was doing her part and being, productive in the family. He didn't see it that way. It was like a competition.
According to Kizzy's sister, Greg had found a way to assert his dominance.
He was violent. He would make threats.
His behavior is very abusive.
Kiz told detectives that the missing woman's estranged husband, Greg, was threatening and abusive.
As far as Greg's behavior, everything was a red flag for me.
Greg Walker was definitely the family's #1 suspect.
Kizzy's sister tells detectives that it was Greg's behavior that led to the divorce.
The main factor in her leaving was his abuse.
It started off verbally, but it actually went to physical very quickly.
So she left him?
Not at first.
Instead, she'd mostly kept Greg's abuse hidden.
Kizzy was very private. She didn't share a lot. She didn't talk very much about her private life and relationships. That was kind of like a mystery.
But her silence didn't stop the abuse.
Things began to get gradually worse and worse.
How?
He was sure she was cheating on him.
Kizzy had a lot of cell phones, and she never threw the old ones away. So he decided while she was on the road that he was going through her old stuff.
Greg starts going through the messages, and he becomes absolutely irate.
He was jealous.
And when Kizzy came home from the road, he was waiting.
He accused her of cheating and having an affair.
Those are old phones, Greg.
Kizzy lets Greg know these messages are from prior to us getting married. But Greg is not hearing it.
You think I'm stupid?
He will not let it go.
And that's why he pulled the knife.
You even think about leaving me? I will kill you.
After Kizzy revealed the true nature of her relationship with Greg, her sister says she urged Kizzy to end the relationship.
I told Kizzy, he's showing you himself. You have to trust what he's showing you.
For once, Kizzy had stopped laughing off Greg's behavior.
She stayed with me. She would be home for weeks at a time or gone for weeks because she did long hauls. So I just kept her stuff. We kept in contact and just kept checking on each other.
As far as Kizzy's family knew, that was the end of it.
We did not really see her going back over there. All the conversations were, I'm done with him.
But Kizzy hadn't made a clean break. And on the day she disappeared, she'd supposedly gone by Greg's apartment.
She had a conversation with one of her friends and told her, I'm going to the house, I'm going to get the rest of my stuff.
When the abuser knows that the victim is no longer in the home, but their things are there, they are going to use that as ransom. That is still about the control.
It was the last time anyone heard from Kizzy.
Now that detectives know how abusive Greg has been, they doubt it's a coincidence.
The more we learned about Greg Walker, the more we had a viable suspect.
We're going to do everything in our power to resolve this.
Okay.
I'll see you out.
To detectives, that appears even more true when they look into Greg's criminal history.
What they find is even more alarming than what they even figured.
Everything we found in his past, there was a pattern of behavior of being violent with females.
He'd even pulled a knife on another woman, the mother of his child.
He had actually cut her, and she stumbled out of the door. They were in an apartment complex, and she was able to alert some neighbors.
Had something similar happened to Kizzy.
Knowing that he's already threatened her with a knife once, his propensity for violence is already there.
It's a long way from enough evidence for a murder charge, but the record search does give detectives a way to put pressure on Greg.
He did have an outstanding warrant for his arrest.
Armed with the warrant, the detectives descend on Gregory's house.
We knocked on his door, and I'm sure he looked out the peephole and thought, oh my God, what are they doing here?
Good afternoon, officers. Have you found Kizzy?
No, I'm afraid not.
But whatever happened to her, they are now certain that Greg had something to do with it.
When the door opened, the smell of cleaning products just hit me in the face.
Kizzy Richardson Walker's disappearance knock on her estranged husband Greg's door. They suspect they've stumbled upon a crime scene.
When Greg entered the door, the detectives were met with a strong odor of cleaning products.
I've smelled clean homes before, but this was so overpowering.
But we have an outstanding warrant for your arrest.
No, that warrant's no good.
The detectives place Greg under arrest for the outstanding warrant.
It was a felony warrant, so we were able to immediately take him into custody.
No, man, I'm telling you that warrant's no good. I can prove it.
He was insistent that this was a mistake. All this was taken care of, and he indicated to us he had some paperwork inside that would show that there was no warrant for him.
Where are the papers?
Inside.
Take him to the car.
Yo, y'all making a big mistake.
We agreed to enter his apartment and gather this paperwork that he wanted to provide us.
Of course, that isn't all the detective does.
This was an opportunity for us to walk inside that apartment, and at least we would know if our victim, our missing person, might be there.
There's no trace of Kizzy inside the apartment, but there are plenty of signs that Greg is up to something.
Furniture had been pushed up against the walls. It looks like the carpets were wet. You know, you could tell there was a major cleanup job going on.
We're gonna need CSI.
I remember looking at Sergeant May and I said, this is not good.
I think I said, he killed her.
But can the detectives prove it?
We got a search warrant for that apartment and brought a physical evidence section in to do forensic investigating.
It's extremely hard to completely clean up. Blood is a protein, so you may be able to get the color out, but you can't get the protein out.
Hoping to reveal the telltale stains, the forensic team uses a chemical called luminol.
Luminol reacts with proteins in the blood and glows under ultraviolet light.
So what you do with that, once you spray that on there, you turn off the lights and you hit it with a blue light.
Under the blue light, the results are undeniable.
And that room glowed.
It was just blue. The whole place was just lit up.
The carpet isn't the only place detectives find incriminating evidence.
There's a lot of stuff in the living room, and it looked like there was fluid or something everywhere. We did a presumptive blood test, and it did come back as human blood.
Now convinced that Greg killed Kizzy, the detectives haul him into the interrogation room and confront him with what they found.
But Greg isn't about to crack.
We know you did it.
We know you killed Kizzy.
I'm not talking without a lawyer.
Once he invoked his right to have a lawyer, then we were done talking to him. We knew we were just going to have to prove this case with the evidence.
And the evidence against Greg becomes even stronger when detectives receive Kizzy's cell phone records.
The records revealed the truth behind the social media posts Kizzy supposedly made from the casino in Oklahoma.
It was actually being made from Gregory's apartment. So it wasn't at any casino.
They were not from her. They were from Greg, where he was trying to act like he was her.
Comparing Kizzy's phone records with Greg's, their movements after she went missing also offer a clue to where detectives might find her.
They were able to track their cell phones together from Texas through Louisiana and stopped in Mississippi.
The detectives believe Kizzy is somewhere along that route.
Greg drove across East Texas, Louisiana, and into Mississippi, so there's no shortage of woods to dump a body.
We put a BOLO, which is the be on the lookout for, between Dallas and Florida on the highway system.
We had to go wide.
We needed to find her, whether she was alive or not.
And on October 22nd, 1 week after Kizzy disappeared, the BOLO produces a possible lead.
The scars on?
We got a message from Mississippi.
They had a unidentified Jane Doe that had been burnt on the side of the road.
The body is an African-American female around the age of 30 years old.
Have just received word that authorities in Mississippi have recovered a body that could be the missing long-haul truck driver.
The body was that of an African-American woman in her late 20s to early 30s, but she had been badly burned.
They had sent photographs the best they could, and it was difficult because we couldn't identify her.
At least not from the photos.
A couple of detectives went to Mississippi and took DNA samples from the medical examiner's office and brought them back to Dallas County.
My sister called me and she said the FBI had come and asked if Kizzy had a hairbrush or anything at her house, and they took it. They wanted that for DNA.
And they did confirm that it was her.
Once detectives confirm that Kizzy's been found, they break the devastating news to her family.
And just remember them saying they found Kizzy and she's not alive, and I just lost it.
We didn't tell them what her body condition was in. We just told them that she was deceased. It's a hard thing to do, to tell somebody that your daughter was beat to death, put in the trunk of a car, driven to Mississippi, doused with gasoline, and then set on fire.
I am thankful to God that we did get closure in getting her body, what was left of it.
With the confirmation that the remains are Kizzy's, prosecutors charge Greg with first-degree murder.
As far as motive for this crime, we didn't get to talk to him long enough to get that out of him from his own mouth. But, you know, if you look at his past history, the violence in those relationships, he put a knife to her throat and he told her, "I'm gonna kill you." I think it was his intention. Once he believed that she wasn't coming back, he decided then, you know, when I have the opportunity, I'm gonna kill her.
The detectives believe that opportunity came when Kizzy dropped by the apartment on October 15th.
What are you doing?
I wanted to return this.
She went back just to give him the laptop.
But I gave it to you.
Detectives figure that led to an argument.
He probably saw that as disrespectful.
Just take it, Greg. We're done.
Why don't you come in and get the rest of your stuff then? Why it's gotta be like this, huh?
Because I'm done, Greg. I'm done.
I'm gonna tell you when you're done.
He got a dumbbell and hit her in the head.
He continued to beat her. And there was so much blood.
Then he put her in the trunk of her car. And he drove her body to Mississippi. And he set her body on fire on the side of the road. It's just hard to know that we have people on this earth that has no regards to human life.
After burning the body, he returned to Texas and attempted to cover his tracks.
He used Kizzy's cell phone to post a false trail on social media and then sent texts to family members about going to the casino in Oklahoma.
All of it was a lie.
Then he tried to destroy any evidence of a crime scene.
Mr. Walker went to great lengths to try to clean up that apartment, but you can't escape the physical evidence.
There was so much overwhelming evidence in this case that it never went to trial.
Instead, the prosecutors offer Greg a plea deal.
He decides to take it, and he's sentenced to 45 years behind bars.
That's a respectable sentence. there is justice in the fact that he's having to pay for his crime. While he's incarcerated, he can't do this to anyone else. But for Kizzy, is it justice for her? I don't know.
Kizzy's friends and family don't think so.
I wish there was not even a plea offered to him. You committed murder. And that made me feel like we'll never have justice, because to have justice would be to have her alive again.
45 years for taking somebody's life and then you burning their body. I just didn't understand.
I don't wish death on anyone. I don't even believe in the death penalty. But it definitely wasn't enough.
Because Kizzy's gone. He should be gone. You know, that's my view about it. I mean, he can still get up and eat and look at TV or call people. Kizzy can't do that.
Although even if Greg had ended up on death row, there's no righting the wrong that he'd done.
Didn't matter. It wouldn't bring her back.
Her presence, I miss it.
Everything's looking good. Heading out.
Sometimes I forgive him and then sometimes I take it back because Kizzy would be here.
They go to knock on doors and see if there are witnesses.
But as the neighbor and officers approach David's house, they notice something else.
The smoke appeared to be coming from the unit where Takira Collins lived with her 2 children.
They look through those windows. There's a lot of smoke.
It looked like there had been a fire inside.
It burned itself out.
However, the fire is still a tragedy.
Hey, I see kids in there.
Life had never been easy for 25-year-old Takira Collins.
Our father, he passed when she was 1 going on 2.
You could tell it was hard on her. It affected her a lot.
In the aftermath, Takira's mother struggled to make ends meet.
Growing up in poverty, it just made things very difficult. Childhood for us was stressful.
As a result, the siblings stuck together.
She wanted us to be inseparable. She always wanted to be there for me. I always wanted to be there for her. And the older we got, the stronger we got.
But as important as their bond was, Takira longed for more.
She did want family just because she didn't have a father growing up.
By 18, she'd found what she was looking for with Armand Johnson, a young man that lived in her neighborhood.
Being from the same neighborhood and being around things and seeing things and being through things together, that made their bond, strong and tight.
The couple fell in love, and in 2012, Takira gave birth to a baby boy.
He is beautiful.
He looks like you.
You think so?
Well, he is Armand Johnson Jr.
I know she was happy.
Once her son was born, Takira devoted herself to raising the child.
Her whole mindset changed. She just wanted to do better and be better. She was just focused. She was being a mom.
But while Takira was home with their child, Armand was out in the streets.
He ended up going to jail.
He was sent away for 5 years on robbery charges.
While Armand was in prison, Takira remained focused on raising their child.
Takira Collins was a dedicated mom, and she was a hard worker. She worked multiple jobs.
She also met someone new, a man named Anthony Stevens.
Hey, I saw you sitting here and I just had to come over and meet you.
I'm glad you did.
When Takira met Anthony, she was happy, head over heels.
That first meeting quickly blossomed into a romance.
They going out, dates, and they kicking it and spending time together.
Pretty soon, they welcomed their own bundle of joy into the world, Aubrey.
She was so happy that she had a girl. Like, finally, I got a mini-me.
But Takira's relationship with Anthony didn't last either.
I turned sour, but they was together for, I'd say, about a year.
She said he became overprotective and was giving her crazy vibes, so she ended things with him.
She was a strong, independent woman.
But she still longed for her kids to have a father figure in their lives.
She ended things with Anthony, and I believe that's when the feelings for Armand started to come back.
She wanted her son's father in his life.
Her son, you know, he older now. He asking about where my dad at. Can I talk to my dad?
Takira reached out, and Armand reconnected with his son and Takira.
He was able to give her the attention she needed, explain to her how things was going to be when he came home.
He told me like, oh, we worked it out.
They got engaged, and they wanted to move forward as a family.
And when Armand finally came home, they did become a family.
Aubrey obviously was a product of a different relationship, but this little girl became his own.
Armand also doted over his little boy.
Good job, man. Yeah.
I could see that he loved his dad.
And Takira was glad to have a family again.
I said, you happy? I'm happy. That's all that matters.
Things was looking good.
But now, officers responding to a shooting have spotted smoke coming from Takira's apartment.
They went to investigate and made a horrifying discovery.
Hey, I see kids in there.
They saw the two children in the house.
They were lying motionless on the floor.
Ready?
The first responders make a forced entry, but they're too late.
Both of the children were dead from smoke inhalation.
You had a tremendous amount of smoke, which is what caused the kids to die.
But the children aren't the only victims. Moving deeper into the apartment, the officers make another grim discovery.
Police discovered Takira's body.
Unlike her children, Takira didn't die in the fire.
Takira had been shot 10 times.
Her and Armand was back together, and things was looking good.
But now, police have found Takira and her two children dead inside her apartment.
Takira had been shot 10 times.
A lot of those injuries were from the back. I believe she was running to her bedroom, trying to get away.
Then the killer had apparently tried to set fire to the apartment, hoping to hide the evidence.
Since the children didn't have any visible injuries, police believe they died from smoke inhalation.
One of the huge factors in this case is the fact that this house was newly renovated and had brand new windows. There were no gaps in these windows. That was crucial because when this house was set aflame, the fire didn't get any oxygen in order for this whole structure to come down. So that's why we are not looking at a pile of rubble.
When homicide detectives arrive, they find clear evidence that the fire had been deliberately set.
There was a gas can left in her bedroom.
Detectives also recover multiple 9mm shell casings, as well as Takira's phone.
Takira's phone is laying on the sofa in the living room.
There were no indications of a robbery or any signs of forced entry.
Adding that to the number of wounds Takira suffered leads detectives to one conclusion.
This was a crime of passion.
Shooting Takira that many times was definitely personal.
10 shots is overkill.
The detectives suspect the children slept through the shooting.
But Takira's daughter woke sometime after the fire had been set.
Aubrey got up from her bed. We know that because she had soot in the bottom of her feet. And when you look at the walls in the house, you see her handprints walking down to her brother's room.
Police found the two children clinging to one another inside her brother's bedroom.
It's heartbreaking.
But did their deaths have anything to do with the murder of their neighbor, David Cousin Jr.?
After looking over the apartment where Takira and her children died, detectives went to the vacant lot nearby where the neighbor found David.
They would have been looking for shell casings and looking to see if these things were connected.
In the grass, Detectives recover one more 9mm shell casing.
It was a match to the ones found in Takira's bedroom, which made detectives believe they were looking for the same shooter in both murders.
While the detectives work, onlookers start to gather outside the crime scene tape.
This had a lot of attention. There were family members showing up. Everyone from the neighborhood is out. It's a chaotic scene at this point.
The neighborhood was on edge to see 2 babies and a mother killed.
Neighbors are just as dismayed by David's murder.
People that lived in Slavic Village in that neighborhood were shocked because who would do something to David?
In his community, he was a very well-respected individual.
But other than being neighbors, there was no real connection between David and Takira.
It was just a high-by situation. This my neighbor. It was nothing like no relationship or none of that. He had a girlfriend. He was about to get married.
Hoping to learn more about Takira, detectives turn to her family, who have started to gather after hearing the horrific news.
Can I see my baby?
Hey, we're so sorry for your loss. When I get home, missed calls. It was coming from our uncle. So I called him. I asked him what's going on. And he told me, like, your sister's, she's gone. The first thing that came to my mind was, okay, well, what about the kids? Where are the kids?
Her family had just the profound sense of loss when, you didn't just lose one family member. You lost 3 and you lost babies.
But the family also says they know who did it.
Family members thought that only one person was responsible.
It had to be Anthony.
And her mother says she has proof.
She sent me a text last night about her youngest father.
Takira's mother received a text from her saying that Anthony was over the house.
And according to Takira's text, Anthony had a gun.
Cleveland detectives have reason to believe Takira Collins' ex-boyfriend, Anthony Stevens, may be responsible for the shooting and arson that killed Takira, her 2 children, and their neighbor, David Cousin Jr.
Takira's mother said she received a late-night text from her daughter that said Anthony had come by the apartment.
He had a gun, and she felt threatened.
Did you tell her to call the police?
I didn't see it until this morning.
Takira's mother said she tried to call Takira as soon as she saw the text.
She didn't answer, so I came straight over.
Do you think he killed her?
It had to be Anthony.
She said if something was to ever happen to her, Arby's father did it.
Takira's mother tells the detectives that Anthony and Takira were having issues over the custody of their daughter.
She was keeping Arby from him because he just got crazier to the point where it scared her.
While detectives are talking to the family, Armand Johnson, the father of Takira's oldest child, arrives at the scene.
Where's Takira? Takira! Where's Takira?
Detectives pulled Armand aside and broke the news that Takira and the kids were dead.
Oh, no!
He said he received a late-night text, just like Takira's mother, that said Anthony had come over and he was threatening her.
No! I got a text message saying...
And also like Takira's mother, he says he hadn't seen the text until it was too late.
He was devastated with what happened.
And the detectives were afraid he would do something rash.
Where is he?
Sir,
no, where's Anthony? I need to see him.
To keep Armand from interfering with the investigation, the detectives take him into custody.
He had an outstanding warrant for some other probation violation.
Once Armand's in custody, the detectives take him down to the station for a formal statement.
He eagerly wants to help.
Although, since he was under arrest, the detectives kept him cuffed.
Right now, you're under arrest for a warrant that you have.
The detectives begin by asking Armand about his relationship with Takira.
He explained that he'd moved in with Takira after he'd gotten out of prison.
However, Armand also says he'd moved out a couple of weeks before the murders.
Why did you leave?
Because we just had disagreements. So how has your relationship been with her recently? You guys talk?
Yeah, we talk. She still let me come see my kids.
In fact, Armand had said that he took both of the children to a family reunion in Detroit that weekend.
When was the last time you seen them, those two children?
Sunday when I dropped them off.
He says he didn't have any contact with Takira or the kids after that.
Then when I woke up this morning, I received a text from yesterday.
Armand said the text was about Anthony coming to the apartment and threatening her.
She never said to you what this was all about?
No.
Or why that there was such a problem between them?
No.
Finally, while he's not a suspect, the detectives wrap up the interview by asking Armand where he was the night of the murders.
He said he was home asleep.
I fell asleep right about 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Who can verify that you were home at 9:30 sleeping?
My grandmother, my aunt, my father.
They were all there?
Yes.
He has an alibi. It's not him.
But would Takira's other ex be able to say the same?
Anthony came forward and turned himself in to be questioned.
You're not under arrest. Let me make that clear. We read these to everybody because it's a criminal investigation.
After reading Anthony his rights, the detectives ask about his relationship with Takira.
It was shaky. You crazy.
When you say she's crazy, like, what do you mean by that?
It was just a point in time in my life where I wanted to have my cake and eat it too, and she wasn't with it.
Meaning you want to see other women?
Yeah.
And according to Anthony, he hadn't even seen Takira in more than a year.
When was the last time you actually spoken with Takira?
I would have to say since my daughter was months old, literally.
He was a non-factor in her life, a non-factor in his daughter's life, sadly.
Although he said that was primarily Takira's fault.
I've never reached out to her because every time I even tried to talk to her, it's an argument. It's gonna be something that I don't want it to blow up into.
So in other words, Anthony had just confirmed the custody issues that Takira's family had told the detectives about.
But does that mean they were right to suspect Anthony was her killer?
At this point, detectives confronted him with the text messages that Armand and Takira's mother received.
Anthony reads the message and denies it's true.
He maintained that he had not seen Takira and he was nowhere near her house the night before. He said that somebody was setting him up.
Who would want to jam you up in a quadruple homicide?
I have no idea. I want to find out my damn self.
Anthony also claims to have an alibi.
Mondays, I work 5 to close.
Anthony had a job making sandwiches at the time these offenses happened.
Hey, take a look at this.
When police follow up on Anthony's alibi, his story checks out.
Footage from the sub shop.
They were able to prove that Anthony was at work. There was surveillance footage. They even saw his time card.
And the texts to Takira's mother and Armand?
It's a big red herring, thrown out by the real killer.
But who? Desperate for leads, the detectives run a record search on Takira.
When you look at a victim in a case, their history can guide you to some extent as to who the perpetrator of this crime is.
When detectives look into Takira's history, they find an immediate red flag.
She had taken out an order of protection against another ex-boyfriend.
His name is Darius Murphy.
According to the protective order, Darius had been abusive.
She was beaten, she was also bitten.
Why are you questioning my teacher?
Well, because violent things happen between you two. That's why.
Investigating the murders of Takira Collins, her 2 children, and her neighbor David Cousin Jr. have just learned about an order of protection she took out against an ex-boyfriend named Darius Murphy.
In the request for the order, Takira accused Darius of abusing her.
Is there a possible connection?
Okay, take a seat there for me.
Hoping to find out, the detectives bring Darius in for an interview.
That's a wrong question. I just
Well, because you were a previous boyfriend with her who had a protection order issued against you, and violent things happen between you two. That's why.
Darius admits he had a relationship with Takira, but he says it was brief.
Someone to like August or something.
2018.
Yeah, last year.
That was after Takira broke up with the father of her daughter, Anthony, but while her boyfriend, Armand, was still in jail.
She said it wouldn't like be a relationship because she was already engaged with Armand.
She told you this relationship between you and I can't go on after he gets out.
Yeah, it's gonna stop.
Darius claimed that he was okay with their arrangement, but the detectives aren't so sure.
Was this an if I can't have you, no one can type of situation?
You have someone who is engaged in a crime of passion, it's jealousy, anger.
Plus, Takira claimed he'd been violent with her before.
You ever assault her? Okay. I understand.
People put this fight all the time, argue, but
physically is what I'm asking you.
No, I probably bit her or something, but I never know. Come on.
She alleges you bit her on the back.
Yeah, I do that. I never.
Okay.
Beat her.
Of course, he'd also denied he had anything to do with Takira's murder.
So let me ask you, and I gotta ask you this. It's important. Did you go over to East 63rd Street and have a confrontation with Takira and shoot, kill her?
I never did.
Instead, Darius insists the detective should be looking at Takira's other ex, Armand Johnson.
He said Armand was abusive, according to what Takira had supposedly told him.
She said he used to beat her black and blue, and now he used to put his hands on her in front of the kids.
A lot of times people assume having children makes a relationship better, but having children can also make a relationship an unhealthy environment because a lot of people don't want the responsibility of caring for children. And that happens with a lot of men, that they're just not ready to do that whole commitment piece.
However, Darius doesn't know if the abuse continued once Armand got out of jail.
He said he last talked to her a couple of months before the murders.
Okay. And Armand had already been out of jail.
He was out of jail now, he was talking about them, and she told me how they were doing.
According to Darius, Takira said things were going okay between her and Armand.
She didn't say nothing bad at that time.
She said she was still engaged to him?
At that time, yeah.
Could there be something to Darius's claims about an abusive relationship?
Takira had broken off the engagement.
Or was Darius simply trying to throw detectives off his trail?
Despite Darius's claims about Armand, the detectives pressed him for an alibi.
Is going to corroborate your times for Monday, July 8th through July 9th.
Curiously, Darius hesitates.
I don't want to be putting people in this.
Well, you're going to have to, because right now you're in the middle of this.
Yeah.
To the detectives, it sounded like Darius was hiding something.
Hoping to find out what that might be, the detectives head back to the crime scene.
They canvassed the neighborhood, looking for surveillance cameras that could place Darius in the vicinity the night of the murders.
Police start to focus in on a McDonald's that's very close to Takira's house.
In fact, when detectives review the footage, the surveillance cameras outside the restaurant recorded Takira taking her kids through the drive-thru just hours before the murders.
You may want to check this out.
It's our last known footage, our last time we see Takira and these kids alive.
But what was interesting to detectives was what the cameras recorded a few hours later.
A man runs across the parking lot from the direction of Takira's house and gets in a waiting car.
Could this be the killer making his getaway?
Not too many people go to McDonald's and get picked up.
From the footage, it's tough to make out the man's identity.
The cameras, they're not clear enough.
However, the cameras did offer detectives a good look at the man's shoes.
We could see the design on these shoes and how specific these shoes were.
But who was the man wearing those shoes? It isn't long before the detectives get a call from someone who claims to know.
I called downtown. Hey, I got some information on this case.
What's up?
I know exactly who it is.
Of Takira Collins, her 2 children, and her neighbor David Cousin Jr. have just received an urgent phone call from Takira's friend, Kayla Hodges.
I knew exactly who did it. It was no doubt in my mind.
According to Kayla, the killer was Armand Johnson, the father of Takira's oldest child.
Armand, I knew for a fact. But it just was like, damn, why you do the kids?
When Kayla comes in to sit down with the detectives, she says she always knew there was trouble in the relationship.
I could see that she wasn't happy. Like, yeah, you there, you being a father, but you not there.
She told you this?
No, not at first.
She'd tell me some stuff, but she ain't telling us everything.
Kayla says Takira also kept her family in the dark.
It's a dirty secret. And because it is cyclical, you don't want to tell someone what happened with your abuser, because in a week, in a month, in a few days, things are going to be good. And you don't want them to alienate that person from your life.
But according to Kayla, the trouble between Armand and Takira got so bad that she couldn't hide it from everyone.
I got a call. I'm in the hospital. I got stitches. Got some stitches for what? Oh, Armand got mad and hit me in my lip.
Kayla says it was only then that Takira revealed the truth about Armand.
The relationship was just really, really toxic.
He wouldn't stop putting his hands on her. He was basically insecure about any relationship with any males that he thought was more than a friendship.
The perpetrator in the domestic violence feels a lack of control, but does not feel that they have done anything wrong.
And unfortunately, a lot of women don't think that they can get out of an abusive situation.
Which is why, according to Kayla, Takira was secretly relieved when Armand went to prison.
It's like, when he went away, she don't have to deal with that no more.
But Kayla says that Takira's resolve weakened while Armand was away.
You start feeling bad for somebody, get the text and writing letters. He incarcerated. That's your child's father. Because I wouldn't say I wouldn't do the same thing. I probably would have.
Over a time period, a person begins to start minimizing the negative of the relationship to the point where they're like, it wasn't that bad with this person.
And when Armand got out of prison, the couple reconciled.
He's sorry, he apologized.
But he hadn't changed at all.
You started abusing her again.
Yeah.
He's supposed to busted up her lip pretty bad, gave her a black eye. But unfortunately, they kept me out of the loop. They didn't want me to do anything to Armand.
However, while Takira didn't tell her brother about the abuse, she did break off her engagement with Armand.
She was no longer going to put up with his behavior. She didn't want her kids around it.
When she was finally done and walking away, I could see a change. Like, she was happy. You could tell that she was excited for the new adventure.
That's extremely important and relevant in a case like this.
So you think Armand did this?
Oh, I'm sure of it.
The picture Kayla paints sounds plausible to detectives.
For him, it was like an all or nothing. He wanted her in his life, and what is scary about domestic violence relationships is that the most dangerous time is when you decide to leave. And we can make and pass laws, but at the end of the day, those things are just words on a piece of paper. And that's not going to protect anyone against 10 gunshots. If someone is intent on killing you because they can't have you, they're going to do it.
Question is, can detectives prove it?
They got a search warrant to Armand's grandmother's home where he was living with his aunt.
Hi, how can I help you?
Ma'am, we have a warrant to search your property.
Oh, dear. Okay. Sure, come on in.
They don't find a smoking gun, but what they do find is almost as damning.
They discovered some very distinct shoes, the same ones that were in the surveillance footage.
You look at the shoes and definitely say they're the same shoes. And then they're shoes that happen to have gasoline on them.
Whoever set the fire had spread gasoline around the apartment.
They also had blood on them as well.
Before sending the shoes off to the lab for testing, the detectives lean on Armand's aunt.
Earlier, he told police she would vouch that he was home on the night of the murder.
But under pressure from the detectives, she caves.
So was your nephew at home all night on July 8th?
Yes. Yeah. No. Well, not all night.
She admits that on the night of the murders, she picked him up at the McDonald's down the street from Takira's apartment.
I don't know that she truly knew what was going on. You don't want to believe that he's capable of what he did to these kids. That's unthinkable.
Between the aunt's story, the surveillance video, and the shoes, detectives were able to place Armand near the scene of the crime on the night of the murder.
2 days after the murders, the detectives pull Armand out of the jail cell where he's being held on a parole violation and confront him with what they've learned.
I have your aunt talking to us, telling us that she picked you up in the area at the time of this occurrence.
No, it was not.
Armand was denying that he committed these crimes.
But it's no use.
We have a video of you.
However, there was still one thing that detectives wanted to know.
The only thing I do not understand is how you could possibly burn your children alive.
A 26-year-old Armand Johnson killed his ex-fiancée, Takira Collins, her 2 children, and their neighbor, David Cousin Jr.
You went over there.
No, I did not.
And you killed her.
No, I did not.
Armand tries to deny it, but the detectives have proof.
Your own aunt is saying she picked you up that morning from that area right there. And she took you home.
Detectives also have surveillance video to back up his aunt's story.
Armand being captured on camera in the neighborhood at McDonald's was instrumental in the case.
But what the detectives really want is a confession.
In the interview, detectives leaned hard on the fact that Armand's own son had died.
I can understand wanting to hurt her, but not the kids. I just don't understand that part of it.
However, despite the pressure, Armand refuses to crack.
I need to talk to my lawyer.
The interview over, the detectives book Armand on 4 counts of murder.
There's an aggravated murder for Takira, for each one of the kids, and for David Cousin.
As news of the arrest spreads, the community rallies around Takira's family.
Everyone was on social media screaming no justice, no peace.
But as the case moves to trial, the family has a long wait ahead of them.
We had COVID in the middle from the time that this crime happened until the time it went to trial. So there were a lot of delays in addition to what you would normally have with a capital case.
When Armand goes on trial in August of 2022, the prosecutors argue that he just couldn't accept that his relationship with Takira was over.
That was the catalyst. He didn't want to be without her.
And it's been documented that he had an anger issue, that he was jealous of her. He didn't want her with anyone else.
So, on the night of the murders, he'd gone to Takira's apartment.
What do you want?
We need to talk.
No, we don't. We have nothing to talk about.
The kids asleep?
Yeah?
I'm coming in.
No, you're not. You're not welcome here. You need to leave.
Oh, I ain't going nowhere.
Takira tried to run, but it was no use.
He fired at her at least 10 times.
Then, once Takira was dead, he'd spread gasoline around the apartment.
When you look at where that gas was distributed throughout that house, Armand Johnson absolutely intended those kids to lose their lives. He didn't want to leave any witnesses to what he had done.
The prosecutors believe that's also why Armand killed David Cousin Jr.
He was just an innocent bystander, coming in the house at the wrong time.
Armand saw him as someone who could uncover this whole event. That's why he shot and killed him.
That was just so sad that he had to lose his life.
According to the prosecutors, there's no doubt that Armand was responsible.
They had the aunt, the video, and the shoes recovered during the search that all placed him near the scene of the crime.
And that's not all the prosecutors have.
The shoes he was wearing that night had Takira's DNA on them, likely from blood spatter.
Add it all up, it's more than enough for the jury.
Armand is found to be guilty.
He received 4 life sentences without parole. I can sleep well at night knowing that he's never getting out of prison.
Takira's loved ones are less satisfied with the outcome.
It wasn't enough for me. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. That's 4 lives, 2 adults and 2 kids. Then you still living, you still eating, you still breathing. No, that wasn't good enough for me. Still can't sleep at night.
While they still struggle to accept their loss, Takira's friends and family hope her story can help save others from a similar fate.
I don't wish this on nobody, not even my worst enemy. If you're going through that situation, get out.
Pay attention to the red flags. Don't ignore the warning signs. Don't wait before it's too late.
But most of all, Takira's loved ones cherish her memory.
She was my everything. Me and her told each other everything. I don't have that no more.
Takira Lachey Collins was my best friend, and she was a beautiful person. Her kids was adorable angels. And they will be.
Một ngày thi đấu tốt của thủ môn rất đơn giản.
Bruno Fernandes.
Anh ấy đang quan sát và chuẩn bị thực hiện pha tạt bóng. Đó là pha cản phá xuất sắc của thủ môn. Vinicius Junior. Và giờ họ tổ chức tình huống, đó là cú sút. Một pha lập công hoàn hảo, điểm 10 cho chất lượng.
Họ đã chơi tập trung phòng ngự và ngay sau khi có bóng thì cao thủ đã luân chuyển vô cùng nhanh chóng và bàn thắng đã tới.
Khoảng cách rất lớn về mặt tỷ số. Rodrigo. Đó là tình huống phản công. Cơ hội đã trôi qua với pha cản phá vừa rồi của thủ môn. Pha phạt góc đang được các cầu thủ dàn xếp rất kỹ lưỡng. Martinelli đang đưa bóng về phía trước.
Đó là tình huống phạm lỗi của
Anh ấy cố gắng tiếp tục trận đấu bằng pha đá phạt nhanh. 45 phút đầu tiên đã kết thúc với sự áp đảo cho đội bóng dẫn trước. Vâng, đó là một hiệp đấu thiếu cân sức đã diễn ra trong hiệp 1. Và chúng ta cùng chờ xem những thay đổi nào sẽ diễn ra trong hiệp thi đấu thứ hai. Rodrigo.
Jude Bellingham.
Một tình huống dứt điểm và ghi bàn vô cùng hoàn hảo. Huấn luyện viên lúc này chắc hẳn đang rất tức giận với sai lầm ngớ ngẩn vừa rồi của thủ môn. Họ đang dẫn trước với khoảng cách khá xa.
Casemiro.
Anh ấy đã đuổi theo để giành lại quả bóng vừa rồi trong chân đối thủ.